Good afternoon, I'm Abe.
And I'm Frank. And today, we're reading the first half of Chapter 33, The Great Depression and the New Deal, in Bailey, Kennedy, and Cohen's The American Pageant textbook. Abe, take it away.
All right. Hoover was renominated by the Republican Party with a platform of repealing national prohibition and returning management of liquor to the states. The Democrats nominated Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, under a platform promising a balanced budget and sweeping reforms. FDR's wife was Eleanor Roosevelt, who constantly fought for the oppressed and impoverished American citizens. Roosevelt, too, was very concerned with the forgotten man, and he believed that money, not humanity, was expendable. Now, Frank, could you tell me about Roosevelt's plan?
Absolutely. Roosevelt kicked off his campaign by promising a New Deal for the American people, in policies thought up by his brain trust of young intellectuals. Basically, the New Deal was a collection of reforms which aimed at stimulating the economy, providing greater employment, and bringing down the economic depression. Using the theme song Happy Days Are Here Again, the Democrats mustered a heavy following from Americans disillusioned with Hoover's do-nothing plan for depression relief. And therefore, FDR started the campaign with a head start right off the bat. Alright, Abe, as if we don't already know, who won between Hoover and FDR?
Well, Roosevelt won the election of 1932 against Hoover for a few reasons. First, many blacks shifted their faith from the Republican Party to the Roosevelt Democratic Party. Second, Democrats garnered national support by advocating change, that is, a New Deal. During the lame duck period, Hoover attempted to bind Roosevelt to an anti-inflationary policy that would have precluded the New Deal. However, Roosevelt easily resisted Hoover. Now, Frank, could you tell me more about Roosevelt's plan?
Absolutely. In his inauguration speech, FDR laid out a clear path to economic recovery, which was a mixture of job creation and market regulation, stating that, quote, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." He inspired hope in all who heard him. He then moved to pursue his 3 R's: relief, recovery, and reform. This was achieved with the help of Congress, which worked during the so-called 100 days to crank out as much progressive legislation as possible in order to stimulate the economy and provide economic and fiscal reform. Abe, can you enumerate for us the specific policies that Roosevelt put into place in regards to fiscal regulation?
Of course. Roosevelt and the 100 Days Congress went full speed ahead with passing reform acts. So let's talk about them. First, the Emergency Banking Relief Act of 1933 allowed the president to reopen solvent or profitable banks and to manage banking transactions. Second, the Glass-Steagall Banking Reform Act insured deposits all the way up to $5,000. Third, Roosevelt ordered all gold in the U.S. to be exchanged for paper money and then took America off of the gold standard. And lastly, his overall goal was to create inflation by purchasing gold at increasing prices.
I see.
Now, Frank, how did Roosevelt go about creating jobs?
Well, unlike Hoover, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was perfectly willing to spend money in order to create these jobs. His first move was the creation of the Civilian Conservation Corps, or CCC, which created around 3 million jobs right off the bat. Next was the Federal Emergency Relief Act, which hired men to work on long-term projects. The Agricultural Adjustment Act, or AAA, was up next, and it sought to help farmers pay off their mortgages. Now, these acts all cemented FDR's reputation in the eyes of middle-class Americans, since it showed that the government was working to reduce unemployment and help out the common man in light of the Depression. Abe, did some politicians take advantage of the climate of depression?
They did indeed. Several demagogues emerged since unemployment and suffering continued to persist. First, Francis Charles Coughlin, anti-Semitic and fascist, advocated social justice. Second, Dr. Francis E. Townsend promised $200 a month to all citizens over 60. Third, Huey P. Long wanted to make every man a king by giving each family $5,000. The American people began to fear the rise of fascism during economic crisis, so Congress passed the Works Progress Administration, which provided employment on useful projects, such as constructing infrastructure and exterminating crickets in the wonderful Wyoming. Now, Frank, could you tell me what gains there were for women during this time?
Absolutely. FDR called up the best people for the jobs at hand, regardless of gender. Frances Perkins became the first female member of the presidential cabinet, but there were many other influential women throughout the New Deal sectors. Other women brought into power included Franz Boas, Margaret Mead, and Pearl S. Buck, all who served in influential positions during the Great Depression. Abe, can you tell me what help there was for heavy industry at this time?
Yes, Congress began by authorizing the National Recovery Administration, the NRA, with the goal of providing immediate relief and long-range reform and recovery. First, maximums on labor hours and minimums on wages were enforced by the NRA. And second, workers were allowed to bargain collectively through representatives that they themselves chose. In the end, however, the NRA expected too much self-sacrifice from labor, the public, and industry, so it began a gradual decline. The final death blow to the NRA came with the Schnechter decision, which declared that Congress couldn't delegate legislative powers to the president. Congress had also launched the Public Works Administration at this time with the primary purpose of long-range recovery. The PWA provided for the construction of thousands of buildings and highways. Lastly, the seeds of prohibition were sown when the 100 Days Congress legalized drinks with less than 3.2% alcohol content. Now, Frank, what was going on the farms at this time?
Well, in one of the strangest New Deal acts passed by Congress was the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, in which government paid farmers not to farm, therefore decreasing the amount of crops and increasing the price of those crops in circulation. Eventually, this odd act was struck down by the Supreme Court, but it was resurrected in the Second Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1936, which continued payments to farmers despite the fact that they weren't growing crops. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to tune in next time and like and subscribe.
And comment down below if you have any questions.
We'll catch you guys next time.